And our first email this week is from B King, who's from Sweden. Hey guys, I've just started listening to your podcasts and I've been watching your RIP Wii U series on YouTube and I really like your content. I really enjoy your discussions and hearing your perspective and opinions on different things Nintendo related. I live in Sweden and I do have a long bus ride to school, about 2 hours back and forth every day. I really like listening to you guys. It makes the time fly by. I bought a new 3DS XL 2 years ago and got back into Pokemon. This later led to me buying a Wii U last year and I've been really enjoying it ever since. I got into The Legend of Zelda and of course very hyped for the Switch and Breath of the Wild. I've pre-ordered both. Before it comes out though, I wanted to ask you what you want to see in Breath of the Wild from previous Zelda games. This could be items, characters, or whatever you want, but it has to be unconfirmed. I wish you all the best and I'm looking forward to your next podcast. Only 3 weeks left till Breath of the Wild. The hype is real. Greetings from Sweden. Bram, aka B King.
Well, his email kind of gives away when he sent it, seeing as we're now 2 weeks from the launch of Breath of the Wild. But good things there. Thanks very much. First time writer, I believe. So as we put out the call, if you've never written in before, thanks, Bram, for writing in. Nice. So, Bali, let's get into it. Talking about Zelda, the big thing about Breath of the Wild is that it is absolutely breaking from convention, going in a different direction, and trying to essentially reinvent the series and not take a lot of baggage along. But there are some things coming along. You know, we've got the sword and shield, the good old standards. Will there be a boomerang? Will there be a slingshot? Who knows? There's lots of stuff still unconfirmed. So is there anything from items to characters to all that stuff that you would love to see make an appearance in Breath of the Wild?
I will go for a very not simple item, but an unusual item that I absolutely loved in Skyward Sword, which was the beetle. Do I think it will return? Probably not, but I would absolutely love that item. I think, I don't know how much this game is going to utilize sort of the Joy-Con stuff and motion. I believe there's going to be motion, but there is
going to be gyroscopic aiming, as right. Is kind of, it's been confirmed for Splatoon, and you know, it's been used, as we've said before, we really like it as an addition in both Majora and Ocarina 3D, also in Wind Waker HD. Like, I think it's a smart thing to put in there because it makes those fine-tuning things so much more smooth.
So I mean, I guess you can use the beetle using that. So I mean, that would be cool.
You can use the beetle using an analog stick anyway, to be honest.
That's true.
I don't think it necessitates the motion, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and maybe if they did include something like the beetle, it might almost detract from Skyward Sword in a way, because it was such a unique thing about that game, and it was sort of this really unusual item that was used throughout the game, because that game was incredibly good at making you use non-specific dungeon items in multiple dungeons, which was really cool. So I'd probably like to see that trend of not using dungeon-specific items in multiple dungeons almost as much as I'd like to see something like the beetle. Like, I'd love that trend to continue in some way.
I think generally that trend will continue. If you look at the way that everything has been designed, is you can really go anywhere, and so you need to have a variety of options available to you to solve all these puzzles, right? Like, all the stuff we've seen, every single new item, from the magnet to the time stop thing, it's all based around a physics system that is malleable in a fashion that you can create your own solutions that maybe no one else will ever do in the exact same way, right? And so that necessitates you having puzzles that are designed for many people to come across and think differently about. Which is really exciting. It's also potentially a pitfall, because if you make the puzzle too open-ended, it can either become way too easy, or it can just, you start relying on the same stuff over and over again, right? So like, there is a danger in that as well. But I do think, for me personally, when you're talking about the beetle, the thing that excites me about that potentially being in the game, or something like it, is not necessarily any of the physical things it does in terms of puzzle solving, but more in terms of the scouting, right? You think about Breath of the Wild being this huge open area. Sometimes you're not going to have enough stamina to get up behind that wall, right?
I like that camera you can have in Xenoblade Chronicles X, and I actually sort of blew your mind when you came to my house one time, and I Do you remember this? And I got out this camera, and it's basically
because they advertised it in the trailers, and I'd never figured out how to do it. It's the way you basically throw the ball up in the air, and it shows you the horizon.
Yeah, exactly. Like I really hope that Breath of the Wild can have some aspect like that I guess would fit into a Zelda aesthetic. And I mean, this game's aesthetic in that sense is obviously incredibly different with these sort of blue, not futuristic, that might be the wrong word, but there's something very techno about it. There's something non-traditional about it, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I actually think the beetle fits in perfectly well to what they've created for Breath of the Wild. Like, it has... And Skyward Sword generally has a interesting relationship with technology in the sense that a lot of it is based in, like, the even further past. Like, when you go to Lanayru, that stuff where the desert turns into the river and you go on the sand ship, and there's like stuff with the droids that are from the past. Like, it's really interesting because Skyward Sword is like, hey, this is the first Zelda, but then you go down to the surface and there's like this prehistory to the first Zelda. So that's super thematic, and I think the Breath of the Wild doing stuff with that technology fits well. But yeah, totally. I just think any idea or any way to scout the environment in a more nuanced way, because I think Breath of the Wild has the ability for you to look into the distance and place waypoints and things like that. Like, there is that kind of map feature built into it.
It's the idea of getting high up and having some sort of telescopic sort of thing that can just look out. That'd be really cool. I really want to see, and I know we've been promised towns and things, but the bits of towns we've seen so far are very sort of wide angles. Like, they're not showing very in-depth. I want something, and I was talking about Majora's Mask and Clock Town and how great that town is, but something like a Windfall Island, a clock town, like a really atmospheric like Zelda town. And I just really hope that these towns feel much more like something like a Windfall or a Clock Town, and less like some of the towns from Twilight Princess, I would argue.
Yeah, Kakariko Village, which is so empty and like bereft of any character. As much as I love that game, I will say that one of its weaknesses is in character. Like, who remembers any of those names apart from fucking Colin or... Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually. I only remember Colin's name because I make fun of him in my LP, and that's all I know. He's like the kid who wants to be like Link, I guess. Yeah. There's that, like, the fucking Rastafarian guy. There's the Ilya, I think her name is. Like, Twilight Princess is one of my favorite games. I can't tell you most of the characters, you know. So and then maybe that's a thing as well, as like a lot of these NPCs are not necessarily going to be important, but there is a sense of, especially in Wind Waker, that the places you go to at least have a sense of community and life in them, and people are always running around. You always see someone around the corner. Even when you go to like the Rito place, there's lots of rooms and lots of them kind of milling about.
Dragon Roost is just fantastic. Like, there's not a ton of towns in Wind Waker, arguably, but the few islands you're talking about, Outset, Dragon Roost, the Koroks on Forest Haven, and Windfall, those like 4 locations just really, really have a lot of charm.
Yeah, totally. It makes sense for that world, and there are Gorons in that Kakariko and Twilight Princess, but they are kind of spread out. And to be honest, they're not really characters. They're more mechanical kind of functions of the game, because they can throw Link up higher to different places. So they're just placed in areas that is advantageous for you to get up the village. Like, they're not even actually functioning as a part of the world in a sense that you would maybe want them to be. So that's a good call. So the 2 towns we've seen, one of them has been in a desert, one of them's been in a kind of traditional location, and then we saw a smaller one in a previous trailer. How many towns do you think we're gonna have in this game? Because it seems like the world is big. I just don't know how many different communities there are going to be. I honestly
wouldn't want more than sort of that Wind Waker model when I'm talking about towns with atmosphere of even as low as 4 or 5. Like, it really doesn't even need more than that, in my opinion. I think yes, this game is going to be incredibly expansive, and that's fantastic, but I think it might almost be overwhelming in many aspects to have more towns than that, perhaps. I don't know.
I like the idea of a town as a base of operations, right? When you're going out into the world exploring. I like the idea of having them be frequent enough that you can easily, or not easily, but like, potentially walk within or ride within distance without having to take too long. You're not necessarily going across the map. And one of the things I think when I'm playing Breath of the Wild is I'm going to try and walk or ride as much as I can and not teleport places, because I think that's part of the experience, is like taking in that world and learning it and wandering around and finding things. So I do hope that they're kind of spread in a way that makes sense for your travels, so you're not kind of waiting to be like, oh, I need to sell all this stuff and finally get back somewhere, you know. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that would work. In terms of like some other items and things, I have a few ideas. I think the spinner would be a really cool thing to bring back.
It's niche, but it's awesome.
It is niche, but I think the thing about the spinner is it never functioned in the way you wanted it to, right? Like, it worked in these single rooms which had these tracks, and that was great for the few times it was used.
It turned Zelda into VVVVV.
Yeah, weirdly. Yeah, that's a really interesting comparison that I've never thought about before, but you're right. Yeah,
like a single button platformer.
Yeah, basically jumping between planes.
Yeah.
The thing is, when you're out on Hyrule Field, you can't just jump on the spinner and go like zooming across, right?
It's not like a surfboard. It's like a specific cog for a specific place.
I think with this idea of surfing down on your shield and stuff, like bringing the spinner back as some really high tier item.
Imagine if it was the one that helped you go uphill or something, like you just spin yourself up a mountain.
Right. So like it's essentially this technologically infused item that you find that has the ability to make you traverse the land and the kind of higher landscapes more easily. That would be fascinating if they did that.
I'm going to be so torn, like going downhill, whether I want to glide or surf. And like, it's great that you can sort of do a combo as well, where you can.
Oh, dude, yeah, like that one video of going down the snowy mountain where they jump off of that ledge and then glide and then go back to snowboarding. Fuck, so much crazy stuff.
Really cool.
It's really exciting things generally. And then there are another couple of items I thought about. So you can't necessarily have a situation where you have something like the big Goron sword or the Megaton hammer be like weapons that are special anymore, because every weapon is apparently disposable, you know, like they don't have like these individual functions that items previously used to. They are stat dependent, they're very RPG influenced. So I wonder if they're going to make any sort of return at all, if we will find, you know, akin to an axe, a giant ass hammer that is similar like that. And
how is the Master Sword going to be incorporated is another one we don't know. Like, if all the weapons break, then how do you just have this one sword that doesn't? And
totally,
will it break? I don't know. That'd be interesting to see.
And then I think the one that I'm really fascinated by, especially given this physics system, is the iron boots. And we've already seen videos of, hey, you can put Link on this plank and drop this boulder and he will go fucking flying through the air. Like, there is some crazy ass shit you could do with dropping Link with the iron boots onto something. Yeah, you could bring magnets back, of course, from
we already know magnets are there, but we just... The iron boots are so linked to magnetism that they must be doing... There must be some link between the two of them.
Yeah, maybe. Like, maybe there's a way for you to magnesis yourself wearing the iron boots somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, you know, that ties into the whole, weather system as well. Apparently you can get hit by lightning if you have, metal objects on you. So wearing the iron boots in that weather would be a bad idea and stuff like that. No, I know, it's crazy. But, like, I was also thinking about, hey, what if there was an enemy below and you jumped off a thing with your glide and then you put on the iron boots and just fucking crush them beneath your feet, right? Like, there is so much potential with this physics system to do crazy shit like that. So I'm really interested in how they'll approach those kind of things, because I think they will bring back certain weapons and items from the past, but give them a new spin, you know? So that's,
we'll
that's
find
most
out in
of
2
what
weeks.
I was thinking. Yeah, we will. My last question to you, Bally. Will we see Tingle in Breath of the Wild? And what will Breath of the Wild Tingle look like? That's the real question.
He'll look similar-ish to Wind Waker. As much as the art style is different, I think it has elements that link to that. And I think he's going to have like his own town or something with like a mini game. Like,
it could be like the Mr. Saturn village, where there's just a village of Tingles.
Yeah.
That'd be real fucked up.
Yeah, that'd be weird, but good. Yeah,
I mean, Tingle's really weird,
and like
anyway.
he has his own like watchtower in Wind Waker and stuff like that, and the cave and stuff. So I think they'll go for, like, if he had some sort of cave maybe, or like a town that's in a cave that's based like Saturn Valley or something. Who knows?
Potentially.
I think he
my
will appear.
my one last thing, Bally, before we end this question is, what would be a real dick move is if they brought back the lens of truth. Because with a world this fucking huge, if you have just invisible areas you can find with a lens of truth, dear God, that sounds like a nightmare to me. So that could be a bad one, maybe, as an example.
I wouldn't like that. But
No.
yeah, we will find out soon.
Some good ideas in there, I think, Bally. We're excited at least to find out whether any of them are true.
Definitely.
If you enjoyed this discussion and would like to hear more, consider subscribing to us on YouTube and following the podcast playlist. You can also find us on iTunes and various other places. Follow us on Twitter at TNL Podcast and email us thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.